Hello, hello. Welcome to the GoDaddy Pro EMEA Meetup. I'm Courtney Robertson. I am filling in for a little bit for my teammate Maya, who had some major snow events that really changed her schedule today, but she will be joining us hopefully in just a few more minutes. We've got a great lineup here. We're on the eve of State of the Word, and it's the end of 2021, and there's just so much that we do around this time of the year. Looking forward to what is coming. WordPress 5.9 ships now at the end of January, and with all of that, it's a really fun time to start thinking about what do we expect to see coming with WordPress, with the web in general, as we move into the future. So we've got a fantastic panel with us today. I'm going to ask Cami to go first and share with us what brings you, what it is that you do, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Cami McNamara. I own Webcamming Site Design. I'm based out of Seattle, Washington. I've been building websites for 20 years in February. I work with WordPress, and I work basically with small businesses and nonprofits. I am also the first GoDaddy Pro ambassador and attended both WordCamp Nashville and WordCamp St. Louis with the GoDaddy team, so I'm really happy to be here today.
Anne, how about you?
Hi, I'm Anne McCarthy. Where do I even start? I started using WordPress in 2011 as a student at UNC, and then started working for the university and became a happiness engineer at Automatic. And most recently, I've jumped into a role where I spearhead the full site editing outreach program. So I am very knee deep in full site editing, which is a big deal for 5.9. And as a result, I am the co-test lead for 5.9 and the user docs lead on the doc squad for 5.9 as well. I think that's as short as I can be.
I know the feeling. It's kind of similar for me. Paul, can you share with us a little bit about yourself?
I'll certainly try. I think I'm more defined by what I used to be than what I am now. So, but these days I'm more of a freelancer, solopreneur, just working in digital, and a lot of that is WordPress, etc. So I'm creating websites, running care plans, and also got a new thing on the go called Digital Master Dojo, which is at digitalmasterdojo.com. And so you can sign up there for an email for when we launch. And in terms of what I used to be within WordPress, I used to do a lot of stuff in the WordPress media. I was the co-host of WP Builds This Week in WordPress. I was also briefly managing editor for the WP Minute, and various other things over the years. And now I just do a little bit less of that sort of thing. And but I'm super happy to be here today with among friends as well, especially.
Yep, fantastic. And Ronald, can you introduce yourself for us?
Hello, everybody. So my name is Ronald Giselle. I live in the UK, and I work for a plugin company, or WooCommerce plugin company called Yith. I also co-host a lot of the sessions for Doodoo and run a weekly WooCommerce London meetup. For the last couple of years, we've done 61 sessions in a year and a half or so it's quite a full-on one. I used to work with Paul. We used to have an old courthouse, and we did several projects together. So going back quite a few years, working with WordPress, and now mainly focused on WooCommerce.
Oh, fantastic.
We used to play a lot of Paul together. Every day. Yeah, sorry.
Just in case my wife is listening.
Yeah, we were working really hard every day. That was the main thing we were doing, collaborating. Yeah, work.
Good stuff. So we have some people sharing over in the chat area roughly where in the world you are. I would like to encourage you to go through the chat area, leave a message for us. If you have any questions during this entire time, feel free to ask them over in the Q&A, and some of my teammates like Marcus or Ken might help me filter through all of the questions coming in to make sure we get a chance to ask our panelists. So the first thing that we would like to discuss today is dealing with the WordPress 5.9 adoption. We've got a new default theme coming up, and that's 2022. Originally, this was going to happen tomorrow, but we had to postpone, which in itself is kind of a big deal. The fact that we postponed a release at that amount of time, and the new release date is set to be January 25th. one of the questions that we see people asking, starting to ask, beginning to think about is, will my current theme still work with WordPress 5.9?
Into this, if this is what to say.
Go for it.
This is right
Go
up my
for it.
alley. I'll drop a link actually to a post. You'll see a lovely comment from Matt actually that I need to respond to about like why we delayed, and this is just my perspective, and there's also a link to the wider release squad and why that decision was made. But for now, I just want to say your theme will still work with 5.9. You have the option to switch into using a block theme with a default experience, but otherwise things will work as is. Beautiful thing that's been done and learned from the 5.0 release is that giving ways for people to adopt as they're ready is really key. And there are a lot of new paradigm shifting features that are coming. So if you're keen to be an early adopter, it's a great thing to jump into. It is very much, I think it's going to be shipped as with a beta label when you actually, if you use a block theme, but it is not something that you're going to just stumble into or you update to 5.9, all of a sudden your site is in full siting. You would actually have to very much seek it out, switch to a block theme. So rest assured. Also, I do want to know, I think a lot of the emphasis has been on full siting features, which kind of underplays how many features are still going to come in full site editing. So there's a lot of design tools that are coming. There's a lot of new blocks you can use. There's a lot of performance enhancements, and just like anything you would expect to see in Gutenberg releases that are bundled together for WordPress release, a lot of those are still coming. So if you're not using full siting at all or looking forward to that in the 5.9 release, there are still a lot of goodies to look forward to. So I always like to mention that, since I think editing often takes up all the space in the room. And let me drop a link to that post as well. There's also a on just feature adoption. So if you're like an agency or considering things there, I think it's important to think about how to actually adopt these things too, because there's a lot of nuance that can get missed because it's not an all or nothing thing.
No, for sure. Thoughts around as folks adopt 5.9 if they are not changing their themes soon? Do you think that people are going to quickly update?
Yeah, my thoughts on adoption for 5.9 is that I mean, everybody's going to adopt it anyway. It's not, I don't think there's many people who are going to hold back from updating, especially when like 5.9.1 drops is sometimes what people do, just wait for that one. But I think the cool thing in a way, well, first of all, just say congratulations to the whole team that's worked on that, because clearly it's a massive update. And you know, I've seen the video that I've not tried the beta or anything, but I've seen the kind of the marketing video as such that sort of shows what's coming and everything, and it really feels to me like whether you like the Gutenberg experience or not, that the new WordPress has arrived with 5.9, and that is it. It's here now. And as for adoption, 2022 will be the year where at different levels, different people will adopt it or still decide not to, depending on how they feel about how it suits them and that sort of thing. But I think that 5.9 comes along. 2022 is the year. It is there. It is obviously it's not finished completely, but it is feeling like a finished product finally, as such, that goes out and people can react to it as a more finished product. So for instance, Anne and the team and all the people who gather feedback now have got a situation, I imagine, where they can say, yeah, so you're kind of feeding back from a more finished thing. So even if kind of critical feedback comes along, you haven't got to keep saying, oh, that, you know, that bit is currently improving. I mean, everything is always improving to a certain extent, but it feels like we've kind of dotted some I's and crossed off some T's here. So 2022 for adoption for the whole project for Gutenberg, to me, is a bit like adoption of doing things for the environment in the right way, you know, dealing with climate change. So we know that it's coming and we need to deal with it, but how do we make people switch over when they don't necessarily have to? I think it was Elon Musk who says, if you want people to adopt something like dealing with climate change, you need to make it cool, irresistible, and need to make a real reason for them to do it. So you can't, otherwise they just won't. They'll just be looking at the TV saying, did you see that documentary we just watched on climate change? Wasn't it terrible? Yeah, it was terrible. Should we get a McDonald's? Yeah, yes. Just call the people. They'll drive it to the house, and we can get the McDonald's. Great, and then move on to the next day. But if you can use 2022 to really take the feedback and figure out who all your end users are, people like me, people like Cami, end users who are DIY people. Then you've got kind of the people who like to be the trailblazers and stuff like that. Figure out what all those pain points are for those different people, and iterate and change and figure out a strategy based on that. If that happens, I think that 2022 could be a good year for WordPress. I think 2021 was a bit of in my opinion, a bad year. It was kind of a dividing year. I've kind of wrote about this obviously previously, but I do think that there's opportunity for 2022 to pull things back and to figure out where people are coming in. So if they're coming in at a basic level and they only want to lightly touch Gutenberg, that's me, by the way, then you can, then what is the blockage that is stopping someone from going from installing disable Gutenberg to figuring out a way for it to work for them just for the replacement of the text editor? That's the first step. And then taking each of those iterations right up to full site editing, where Customize is gone, widgets is gone, everything's gone, full site editing. Figure that out, and adoption could be pretty smooth. Those are my general thoughts in detail.
Cami, when you're building sites for clients, do you find that the clients are using block editor at this time?
I have a handful of clients that use the block editor. I watched Anne's video. Maya sent it to me, a YouTube video showing the changes, and it's the most impressed I've been with the whole Gutenberg project, with the navigation features and things like that. But when I think about building websites for clients, I think about what my clients see when they log into WordPress. So words like query loop are things that just go right over their heads, right? And so while I agree with Paul completely, this is the most I have looked at the Gutenberg project and thought, wow, they're heading in the right direction. I build all the websites for my clients using Beaver Builder. I've been in a very easy to use page builder system now since 2016. And so for me to make a big switch over, I want to see Gutenberg at the level of ease of use and the full site editing. And I'm excited that it's headed that way. So, but for me right now, I'm going to continue to do things the way I do them, because as a solopreneur, I have to have systems in place that work for me and work for my clients. So,
and that makes sense. Speaking of page builders, any predictions anybody has about what might be on their roadmaps as full site editing comes to core? What do we think that the page builder community, the various, whether it's Beaver Builder or any of the other page builders, what direction or predictions do you think you have about what they will do now that full site editing is starting to come out?
I think what Oxygen has been doing by converting content into blocks is quite an interesting move. So I expect they will do more of that, where you build a tool that you're comfortable with, and that then gets converted into blocks. So how that works with full site, that's there to see. It will take a little bit of time. But I did a recently in the Meetup. I asked people, are you ready to build with Gutenberg? If you know what you know now and you start a new project, what would you choose? And the majority of people were ready to work with blocks, if not with a tool that would help them, even if it's ACF or Oxygen, to help them succeed.
Yeah,
I actually freelance for Beaver Builder, so I know a few things that they're up to, and I can't really speak about those specifically as such, but seeing the general seeing the general direction that I can see, that the things that they talk about and what I see happening with the other page builders, I think that most of the page builders don't want to fight Gutenberg. They don't want to fight it. They just want to figure out where they sit with it and support it, because there's absolutely no benefit to completely fighting the project. It's like same with me, and probably like what Cami said as well.
Yeah.
So I use Beaver Builder, Beaver Thema, and traditional themes like Astra and GeneratePress and those sort of things. And I have figured out where Gutenberg sits in that. I don't need to be turning Gutenberg off and disabling it completely. I've figured out where it lives, and it lives for me in the editorial sense. And I think that what the page builders would do is two things. Number one, they'll figure out how they live with Gutenberg and coexist with it. So forget about narrative of Gutenberg versus page builders, all that stuff. That hopefully that fight will just go away, and it'd be a case of this is how the two things coexist. So really, page builders and theme builders are more of a competition now to the more full site editing aspect of Gutenberg. But there is another aspect of Gutenberg, the original aspect, which is the text editor, the replacement to the classic editor. That integrates pretty well with page builders, whether it's Oxygen or Beaver Builder or Divi. You can create a really nice situation, no content lock-in, and you can probably have a better situation if you use a page builder and the Gutenberg block editor for editorial than you would by using, for instance, cadence blocks to build the entire site. At the moment, my advice is stick with the core blocks if you can, while those core blocks get up to speed and start backfilling the things that some of those third parties have come in and started filling. The other thing that I think the page builders will do is a lot of innovation. I think they're going to address the criticisms that they've got, which is bloat and performance. I can see Divi doing it. I know Beaver Builder are working on it. Oxygen have always been pretty good at this. Bricks comes out, they address it from day one. Zion Builder comes out, addresses it from day one. So I think some of the more older page builders that were the old guard are addressing that. And it comes to a situation where it would be very difficult for either side of the argument to sort of say, well, that sucks and your thing sucks. Well, I think your thing sucks. Eventually, it would just be a case of what kind of recipe do you want to create? What works for you? And I think that's what we'll see in 2022. I think we'll see some leveling up from the page builders, and we'll see some leveling up from Gutenberg. And at the end of the year, we'll probably have an awesome situation for everyone.
I'll quickly add, just because I'm sorry if you can hear sirens, but I love the idea of like letting go of that fight, because really why all this stuff is being built is to reduce duplication. It is seeing, wow, people are really liking what page builders are doing. How can we bring that into core and build it in a foundational way where page builders can actually reuse that, have things be performant, have things be something that's built term use of WordPress, and then we all benefit. And I do think there will be a role for, I don't know if it'll still be the idea of page builders. I don't know how that will evolve in the years to come. But there is definitely a role in curating the experience of editing and creating content with WordPress. And that to me is what page builders do. And that I do not see going away ever. Core will only provide so much, and the experience will be too much for some people and not enough for others. And some people will need more and less control. So I imagine that will continue. And I just love that framing of like, it doesn't need to be a fight. And like I can say from the core side, it's definitely being built so that page builders can also take advantage of what's being built in full site editing. So it's a great perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely the way forward for the WordPress community. Just knowing how our community can be. So one of the things as I'm hearing all of you discussing this that I think about is when we're building sites for clients, we often will let them into posts and pages and modify the content themselves. We know that with full site editing, that starts allowing people to more easily modify things like, I want to change something in my footer or something to that effect, and that there will be eventually more controls to be more granular about what people can access. As you think about the clients that you have, do you envision that they might have an easier time if it's their own site? How much do you want them getting to, for instance, the footer template part? Because that allows them to change some of the information that's there without needing perhaps the website maintainer in the process. And they also don't need to know code to make that change. it might be a little bit of a lower barrier for them to navigate through full site editing compared to learning all of a page builder to get to that spot to change that thing. So I've been thinking about where is the intersection of a website owner needs to modify a little piece. How will each of you approach that, I guess? Those that have
I'll start with this one. I love it when my clients do their own updates. I also, like Paul, offer care plans. I've got a backup every single night. So if they make a mistake, but the footer might contain their hours, their phone, a lot of basic information. And so I utilize Loom a lot to make a training video for them just for their particular website. And I put a link to that in their dashboard so they can always get to it. But I also utilize the WP 101 plugin for training videos, which I think that their Gutenberg videos are quite good. So when I saw the navigation and the header footer feature coming into the new release, that I thought was a really major step in the right direction, because I have my clients doing that right now in Beaver Themer, so they can update their header and footer. But I love it when my clients get in there and do as much as they can, and I just come in for heavy lifting. That's the ideal situation for me and my clients.
It's all about empowering your customer and the user, and I think that's why WordPress is such a good tool, and we all use it to market ourselves. And I don't believe that my work or Paul's work, I'm assuming Cami as well, has been reduced over the years as editing tools have become more, easier to use and more functionality. If anything, it becomes more complex, and you find ourselves getting to do a lot more work. So giving some control for the user, and I think the opening times and some of the offerings is a really good example of how you can get them to do more stuff. And actually then start to build on top of their businesses, because I'm assuming most customers have a commercial enterprise of earning money. So you're part of that tool set of your expertise that you offer to them. And WordPress is, as I've always said, is just a tool. It's a tool to help build that big business or empire.
Can I add something to that, actually? That I think there's some really good opportunities. Like, first of all, I just think a typical client, if we're talking about clients, will completely destroy the header and footer if they try and mess with it. But there is an opportunity. Like, doesn't matter what tool they use. It really, that is just a situation. But I think when you look at, I don't even know if this is possible, but when you look at things like theme.json for controlling, the style aspects, then there's an opportunity, I think, when you have things like full site editing coming into play, which is probably more of a solution provider's tool as part of the whole WordPress experience, to have something a little bit like theme.json that is, I don't know, theme.info or something. No, it would be called .json, info.json, right? And what it is, it's like if it is a shop and it has opening times, that there is some kind of static file that is writable to, that contains a certain bunch of static elements, like their business number and their phone number and their address and the opening hours and that kind of stuff. And that those things could be put in there and introduced into a UI within the WordPress experience that allowed somebody to go, okay, so I want to change my accent color. The branding has changed. And if the client knows from the branding company what color has changed, they can change that accent color, change it once. The website is not broken. It still looks okay, because the designer who created the website has thought about where the accent color goes as such. Next thing that they can update is their opening hours. So because the opening hours often live in the header and the footer, and we don't really necessarily want the situation, at least for a couple of years until maybe full site editing really matures, where they're going into a kind of a safari situation and getting eaten by the crocodiles and the lions while they're there. So it'd be cool to see how things develop on that front for the whole full site editing experience. Again, for my clients, I would be still keeping the theme surrounding area separate with my page builder for the time being. I don't see that changing for a long time. The one thing I would just add to it is I do have a concern I saw a deal on AppSumo just the other day, and it was like a WordPress solution that was kind of jumping on the full site editing bandwagon as such, and filling in, just like what happened before with the main Gutenberg editor, filling in like all the gaps that the full site editing solution doesn't do, but kind of builds on the hype of full site editing. So like a kind of third-party solution that I really don't think will be here in a year's time. And I think that there will be a lot of those kind of solutions that come in, try and make a few quick dollars, and people get burned by that. I think that personally the WordPress team has gone about full site editing in a much better way than I mean, in my humble opinion, than the original Gutenberg rollout. I think that, like Anne said, the full site editing thing, you've got to be very intentional to go and find it and start using it. Whereas before with Gutenberg, you had to be intentional to go and turn it off. So I like this way round. I think that that's a much healthier way for adoption. People who are end users who don't really know what's going on will be far less likely to get burned and find themselves in tricky or sticky situations and go off to Wix or go off to Squarespace or something, which is what we don't want them to do. And if they leave WordPress.org, which they don't even know the difference between .com and .org, they're not going to go to WordPress.com either. They're going to go to something completely different. So I think introducing these features in a way that's healthy and making sure that whoever is kind of responsible and the leaders in the community is making sure that they're looking after the end users by putting out the message into, hey, if you're going to mess around with full site editing, stick with the core stuff and keep it safe and keep your risk in check. If you see something out there that looks too good to be true, that is so far ahead of where the project is that it doesn't look right, then use critical thinking and say, maybe I should just wait. Let's see how that pans out. And don't be fooled by a quick deal that will run out in a couple of months for $49 on AppSumo. There will be another one. Don't worry. There'll be something else, and it will probably be more mature.
That's good. I think about WordPress always maintaining backwards compatibility and the importance we have on that, and a graceful approach to opting in to what's new and coming is definitely a good lesson. I think that I've seen in a few WordPress plugin companies implementing as well over the past few years. So that's been a better adoption rate, I think, is nudging people towards it rather than here we are, surprise. So it should be good. Let's do a little bit of looking ahead to the future. In the chat area, and for those that are watching the replay, I'll tell you the link. I have placed the link for the WordPress Roadmap, wordpress.org/about/roadmap. Having spent some years now in WordPress product companies, I understand roadmaps a little bit better. There's listed 4 phases of Gutenberg roadmap. Easier editing, this is where we saw a lot of work being done to get the block editor out and available, so inside of posts and pages. Customization, when I look through that list of customization, goodness, full site editing, block patterns, block directory, block-based themes. When 5.9 ships, we'll have all of that. I would imagine we might need a release or so to really refine what that looks like after that. But steps 3 and 4 show collaboration and multilingual. I believe I had mentioned a while ago that we were about halfway through the Gutenberg project, as it were, in terms of all of this planning. And so halfway, that puts it at like maybe 5 or 6 years long of an endeavor to ramp things up. So knowing that we're around this halfway point with rolling out full site editing and the other things mentioned there, forecast a little bit. When do you think phase 3 kicks in, and what do you think phase 3 and 4 could look like? Collaboration and multilingual, and maybe what excites you about those areas?
I can touch a little bit on the collaborative editing side. From what I understand, there's actually been some explorations from Riyadh. He's tweeted about them, but he started an exploration around collaborative editing just to see like an early prototype. I think it's AsBlocks. I'll see if I can find it after I finish talking. But yeah, there's a thing called AsBlocks that he's been doing some explorations around, and I think there's some. I would expect to see some more experiments with that in Q1 and Q2. I don't actually know the roadmap, but I'm curious to see what sort of things are done in the community. And from the outreach program side, I'm very curious to know what that actually looks like. And I know some stuff has been, I'll share a link to something I wanted to mention earlier, but things like block locking, block level locking, so that you can't move things around, like that's part of some of the underpinnings of what we think of as collaborative editing. So you have to think about permissions, and you have to think about who can move what around, and then what can be moved as you're looking at it. And so there is some like basic stuff being put in place that will both benefit things before collaborative editing comes around, and things that need to be figured out. Another one of those that I want to mention is multi-entity saving, which is basically like you make changes across a couple different things, and you have to save all of them at once. And that's a kind of a new concept. WordPress that's coming with full citing, but that also is another layer that has to be more refined, and that can be more refined with full citing, ultimately because that will impact collaborative editing. So if you're trying to save multiple changes from multiple different people, what does that look like? So some of this stuff is, I would say, like in progress, if that makes sense, like from a foundational level, but then there's obviously a lot to actually figure out, and I'll drop more links to things. Another thing is like the simple part focus mode, which you were referencing, like that's another layer of permissions. So thinking about like how that looks is also something that will relate to the overall project there. Also, I have to say,
I've got
use Google Docs. I'm like, cannot wait to be away from Google Docs and to just
across
oh
all
God,
Make Team sites for starters.
Yes,
all of the Make Team sites. We want to get away from Google Docs. Yeah, I'm with you, Anne. Sorry about that, Paul. Go for it.
It's okay. So the collaborative part is interesting actually, because I always saw that as basically a replacement for Google Docs within WordPress, which to me, well, I was going to say that didn't seem like a very useful feature, but Courtney, you seem to think it was like really useful. So, and the second thing that I was going to say that possibly doesn't make sense anymore as well was that like sometimes, and this is just an opinion, this isn't a fact, but an opinion of a lot of people, which might include me, is sometimes that the co-founder Matt Mullenweg of WordPress puts things into the roadmap that he thinks is a great idea, as opposed to what do the users say they want that is a good idea, and then we'll base it on that as such. And the example that everyone remembers is the full screen mode, which most people, do one or two things, just get irritated and just, oh, what's going on again, and turn it off. Or eventually, after a couple of months, they'll find a plugin that turns that off. But and just actually changed my perspective on both of those things. So sorry, Matt Mullenweg, didn't mean it. If I was wrong there, and clearly it's an in-demand feature. But the other thing I was going to say about the collaborative mode, the terminology to me just was like the Google Docs thing. But if collaborative mode is a situation where I can collaborate with I can figure out a way that with WordPress that I collaborate with my client, and I give permission, not permissions as in, here's what you're allowed to do. You're so lucky. But what I mean is I can restrict things on a level that makes their experience perfect for to stop wasting their time. So that's why people like me and Cami, who are at the solution providers and freelancers and small agencies, what we're always trying to do for our clients is make their life as easy as possible and stop them from wasting time and stop them from breaking their own websites, which can cost them thousands of pounds a day. So I think the collaborative thing, which, let's see, what is that step? I think that's stage 4 or 3. I'm not sure. 3. I'd love if the project focuses on that side of collaboration first, and then builds the kind of alternative to Google Docs after it. How that rolls out, I don't know. The one thing I'd say before the project runs too far ahead is I've always seen the roadmap and seen I saw different people high up in the project sort of declare this section is finished and we're moving on to the next thing. In terms of like the people who are the laggards, or like me, or who are just adopting at the lower level, I would love to see some love and attention to the thing that surrounds the editor, like the right hand sidebar where you have all the categories, the tags, and all the different things that end up in there, the SEO tools. Because I think that if the people who are the most critical start to become comfortable with the situation, because the UI that surrounds it is really comfortable for them, and it isn't. So it's not just the editor that's downgrading, because sometimes the editor is an upgrade, but because everything else feels like a downgrade, you kind of bundle the whole situation in and feel like it's gone downhill. The truth is, the Gutenberg editor, if you configure it in a way that you want it, is difficult to find a situation where it is truly a downgrade on the classic editor. But the things that surround it are a bit of a mess. So where the meta boxes go, if you're using ACF or MetaBox or toolset, where the categories go, where's the excerpt gone? Oh, it's in the sidebar in a collapsible box. Like, none of that makes sense, and it makes life uncomfortable for our end users. And as a result, we don't advocate for it, because our own situation is we want to advocate for our end users, e.g. our clients. And when we can't advocate for them, we can't advocate for the project. So I'd love to see it like in stage 2 and stage 3, that those things are continuing to improve. And I'm sure that, Anne, you'll tell me that they are anyway. But so some stuff of the things that surround Gutenberg block editor, as well as just the block editor itself, would be great, please.
I'm just dropped a link to a design from Shawnee Andrews, and this actually came up with some weird, a lot of conversations happen around what is going to go in 5.9, what is also left over for, and this is very top of mind, is actually that publishing setup, just the sidebar in general and the post editor really needs to be done and evolved. It's so frustrating, and I think this is something that luckily we have designs in place for. It just could not make it in for 5.9, but from what I understand, this is definitely a priority for 6.0, because folks like yourself, we've been hearing about this in the community a lot. So yeah, as you predicted, it's coming. Stay tuned.
It's coming. Yeah. I've just checked it, and the UI, I didn't, for anyone who is able to click the link and check it out, it's an immediate improvement on the clutter in the sidebar. There's a reason why phone numbers only have a certain amount of numbers, and it's because the human brain can only focus on so many things at once. And that's why we say don't put more than 7 links or 8 links in the navbar. And when the user interface is exposing everything at once, for even for the power users, it's confusing. And I think that's probably what Matt Mullenweg was trying to do when he put this full screen mode, is to get rid of 25 links down the left hand side. But it was probably the right hand side that needed a bit more attention. So if that's coming, that's going to help adoption a lot to solve the general user interface. So it's great to hear that that's potentially getting improved for 6.0.
This is
we've
awesome.
Lost Courtney.
You see, we switch.
You're back.
Sorry guys, I'm late, and I'm really trying to actually catch up with everything that has been going on. Ronald, somebody just passed behind you. Are you somewhere?
Oh, I am in the car park, so yeah.
Because I was really focusing on what people were saying, and then all of a sudden there's somebody walking behind Ronald, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, that's awesome. I hope you're having a great time with us, and I hope that we at least try to tackle a couple of, let's say, visions or perspectives that could strongly influence the way we work and the way we build a business for our clients. I would also have a question when it comes to WooCommerce just recently came out with 6.0 beta, right? Ronald, have you tested it already?
Oh yes, of course, yeah. No, it's I went through all the logs, and it's a minor version update. It's got a bit more blocks, a bit more admin worked in, but nothing major that will cause any concern, at least not for us.
Well, yes, that's actually what I wanted to make a point about. I mean, WordPress experts designed Gutenberg, so the chances your WooCommerce theme will conflict are minimal, right? So, but about the e-commerce websites? I mean, is there any advice with all these, with 5.9 coming up and then this beta going on? Is there any advice for our colleagues who are managing multiple e-com sites for their clients? I mean, they are responsible for the profit and loss of those websites at some point. So what would you advise to them? January is coming.
I think with everything, it's test, backup, staging. Well, not in a different order, but all the usual precautions you would do. But if you've built your site 5 years ago and you've included page builders and different plugins, then removed them and did things slightly differently because Gutenberg wasn't a thing back then, you would know if that legacy code might cause an issue. But I feel, and it's been said before, that the way that we adopt new technologies and how things are being created in or developed into WordPress and WooCommerce, there's a lot more thought gone into it, a lot more smaller updates, each step at a time. There's a lot of opportunity to test and the community to test. And I really like how the contributors help to accommodate these changes and encourage feedback. It's a very open community in that sense. I know we have to go through that, and it's the same for WooCommerce. I think a lot of store owners will always be concerned, but a year down the line, it's there, and you can't think that a future was never there. You just adopt it. And I think that's the thing we just have to go through. And you don't need to press update as soon as it says update right now. You can wait. It's okay. And even if you do, you can go back to a previous version. So, and don't do it on Christmas Eve.
Else would Cami, do you have on retainer e-stores actually with you?
I have a few, but I just take the same philosophy I use with everything, and I will hold off on doing updates for a while just to see how it's going, and chatting with other developers and various Facebook groups and stuff to see how things are going before I pull the trigger on anything. Yeah, I think it's just kind of the same philosophy I have for any updates, no matter what they are, for any plugins.
Sure.
I think a good piece of advice is that if you see the WooCommerce plugins ready for this update, so they have been tested and before the WooCommerce update or before the WordPress update, and then update, because then you know that your additional plugins have done all the testing. I think that just wait for that moment.
Do you guys communicate like updates to your clients? Like, look, on this and this date, there is an update coming. We might actually need to talk more about what we're gonna do after and when we're gonna update the website. Do you communicate those dates to your clients in general?
I do when it's a very big update that I know is coming. Like I don't know how long ago it was, but when Gravity Forms did their giant update, I kind of reached out to my clients via newsletter and said, hey, if you log in, I want to make sure you're not doing the updates. I'm going to handle all of these, and I'm keeping an eye on how it's working for other people. And I learned that from experience years ago of, like, first in managed WP, I'm going to update everything, and then like 37 websites are broken, right? So thank goodness you have backups to roll everything back to, and then the version 0.1 came out, that bug was taken care of. So I tend to be very hold back quite a bit on those, and let the clients know when they need to know.
Nice. If anyone else has to add something, I would like to hear. In the meantime, I will just read regarding the previous conversation, and I believe Peter Ingersoll actually gave a very interesting view. He believes that 5.9 will bring in great features now in Gutenberg. Full site editing deserves attention, but the editing experiencing in improving greatly. What will then be the next great improvement is being able to drag the width of the sidebar. So if we talk about the future of WordPress, are we talking about drag and drop system? I mean, is this how perhaps we're going to be building our websites very easily with automatic alignment? And is this how it's going to look like?
It would need to be if Gutenberg wants to eventually become a legit page builder replacement or page builder alternative, depending on what flavor people want, then just like so many things in other industries, the norm dictates how things need to be. Otherwise, they're classed as subpar. So at the moment, it doesn't matter whether you're using one of the modern page builders or one of the non-WordPress solutions like Wix and Squarespace or some of the other ones out there. The expectation is click, move. It kind of gives you some kind of almost like haptic feedback that yep, you're in the right place. You can let it go now. Let go, dong. And even if you're out, it kind of it shifts itself into place as such. So I think that for that level of stuff, the norm is that it's almost like imagining shipping a car and without a touch screen now. It's kind of like it would be like, where's the touch screen? Where's the thing that I'd control all the stuff on the car? You can't release a car now, even if it was an electric car, without a touch screen on it. In 10 years' time, the touchscreens will be gone and it'll be just talking to the car to tell you to do things or doing gestures on the steering wheel, or even if you do drive them or not. But the truth is that right now, the normal thing for anyone designing something is, number one, it's on the front end, and number two, it gives you haptic feedback on the things that you're doing. And so it maybe I actually don't think, and this is just my prediction, I don't think the Gutenberg project will ever do that. But I don't think it's a problem, because I think the Gutenberg project has an extra challenge that nobody else has, which is accessibility. So it's easy to point and say, well, the Gutenberg project is rubbish because it doesn't have a proper drag and drop thing that gives haptic feedback to the user on where they're going. The truth is that might be because that is just not possible to do and maintain accessibility at the same time. So probably what will happen is third parties will come in, and I don't see that being a problem. If a third-party tool is just coming in just to create a better drag and drop experience, but you can turn the thing off and it makes no difference to anything, e.g. Oxygen Builder does something along those lines, then I think that's where it might be. The problem is, in a way, is that if the Gutenberg project or Matt Mullenweg has an aspiration for it to be an innovative design tool, then that's a major challenge for the project. It's not a problem for the .org, because we've always got third parties to use and to implement for that. So I think that the Gutenberg project, as usual, just needs to make sure it's taking care of the basics really, really well. And then when those are taken care of, move up to the next step, move up to the next step. And by the time they get to the point where they can figure out how to do drag and drop and have accessibility at the same time, whether that's like what they might call wireframe mode and then content mode or something along those lines, someone else will have figured it out as a third party anyway, and they can take inspiration from that and build the appropriate things into core. So I think it's just take it slowly, but it's going to take a long time if accessibility is a super important priority to be able to have both. You can't have your cake and eat it on that, I don't think. So it's a big challenge for the project. And as a result, the page builders will stay strong because they provide that solution without the dedication to, you can build these pages, even if you can't see, basically. Whereas I think Gutenberg is trying to create a more inclusive, holistic situation for everybody, which is good.
Build on that, because I think you're, again, like what we talked about earlier, like page builders, I don't think Gutenberg is trying to be like replace all page builders. I think it's trying to give some shared foundation that page for the longevity of the project. But like, I think, yeah, there's gonna be lots of room for third parties to come in. And if you want more drag and drop action built on top, you can do that. I also want to put a call to anyone who's working in those spaces, is like, if you go out and build a solution and it's working really well, contribute back. Like, not everything has a place in core. Like, it might continue doing this, but like, this is not going to go in core. But there are also things that I've seen where I'm like, no, it would be really great to understand how folks are creating grid systems. Like that is something that has come up in the Gutenberg project. Bring back that information, bring back your experience, bring back your feedback. And I don't think I'm not saying that as like, it'll be incorporated, but it's like, it can only make the project better. And I think if you're struggling to figure out how to do that, which I understand can be like really nerve wracking, I welcome you to ping me. I'm at Anzazu on Wordpress Slack. My site's nomad.blog. I really, truly want to get people sharing more feedback. I know we talk a lot about folks getting involved in these things. And right now, I've been really surprised at like how much work I've had to do to actually go out and be like, hey, can you comment on this? Hey, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and really bringing people in. And I know folks have these great ideas, and it's part of why I really enjoy participating in panels like this, is because I hear these amazing thoughts. And it's like, God, let's bring this into GitHub. Let's bring this on Make Core when there's a discussion. Let's bring this in the meetings, especially in a year where we've seen, contribution drop, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, I'm really excited to see both like the foundation that Core can create, and then what people do to build upon it, so that we can have people aren't locked in, or they're not using something that then you can't migrate to. Like that, I've had to do that with multiple times, and it sucks every single time. And I work on this stuff full time, so I feel that pain for sure.
If you're looking for ideas, I think you're in the right place. Ronald, what do you say?
Well, I was going to just add to that. I think it's a huge opportunity because we've been building a new ecosystem with Gutenberg. So if you haven't planned on that for the future, I think you're missing out on something, because with all these new announcements, and you have a lot of time to get yourselves ready for it. If you have a product on the market and you haven't adapted or you innovate on top of this, do it, because this is really, you have millions and billions of sites on WordPress. Same for WooCommerce. It can't be much clearer than that, and it's almost like a leveling up, because the plugins or the themes that don't continue to grow, innovate, well, it will stop there. It's for those who now, embark on this new era of WordPress, which sometimes can be, can be seen on two sides. It can be tough if you haven't got the resources. But then again, it's been in the planning for at least 3-4 years now. So maybe there has also been enough time to grow into this ecosystem.
What would you like to see the new page builder to look like? I'm sure, I know you're a fan of a Beaver builder, but is there something like, have you ever thought of what would be the best looking like Beaver?
Well, for me, I think I mentioned this earlier, is it's really about the system that I use to build. So I don't want to hop from one builder to another builder. I may do that in my care plan business. So I'm excited to see this move more towards what I have been using, right? Because when I turn Gutenberg on for the blog, the client might feel a little more comfortable because they've been using Beaver Builder for their pages and things like that. So I love the term that Anne mentioned about shared foundation, right? So to me, that's what it really is all about, like, and just having it be something that works together instead of working against each other. So I'm all for that. And I'm excited to see it going this way.
Awesome. Well, we're an hour already, so I'll just ask you, I still didn't get any question from the audience. I don't know if there were any questions before, but most of the time I see just conclusions. And Peter, thank you very much for your total involvement. The chat is exploding actually because of you and Anne, so that's kind of cool. So I just wanted to ask you, now that we're entering 2022, what do you see? We have mentioned a number of trends and possibilities that could happen. Would there be a way that we can summarize what we said, what people should be like watching for, perhaps learning more about, focus more on? Is there something that you would advise them to do as a summary from each of you? Thank you.
Try to kick this off. or here, if you want to do, Ronald, please.
No, Anne, please. No, I was going to just focus on the WooCommerce part of things, if that's sort of my niche here. And I think e-commerce is evolving thanks to the pandemic, and I think we'll see a lot more services and different ways of payment coming into the WooCommerce ecosystem, so to say. And I will, you see little flavors of that, how people are being charged. And one of the examples was on, I think it's one of the airlines, where you literally sit you're on a seat and you've pre-authorized the payment, and just based on your seat number, you'll be charged, and QR codes and new technologies sort of will be adopted by WooCommerce. And I think that eventually will also have an effect on a WordPress, because it's all part of the bigger stack. If you have to quote for a customer, for a client, knowing your possibilities, knowing almost that there are no limits to to building up this business, then WooCommerce or WordPress plus WooCommerce is probably the answer. And I think that will continue to grow.
I want to touch on what somebody in chat mentioned about in-person meetups in 2022. I think that there's just going to be kind of an overall happy feeling in 2022, because we're going to finally get to see each other in person. So, I just sent Bob Dunn off on his train ride to New York City. I hadn't seen Bob in 2 years. We had the best time, and I know he's there in New York City seeing a bunch of people he hasn't seen in 2 years. And I think that that's going to be a good environment for just an overall warm, fuzzy feeling in WordPress in 2022.
Nice. Anne, Paul, would you like to add something to the potential of, I don't know if you heard me. I mean, I was just asking if you would have any trends to actually point to, for instance, that you think would be like vital in next year.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah. So for me, like, being a designer and someone into UX, I think, and my dog might bark, by the way, she's getting upset about something. But the year 2022, I also agree. I hope it's a nice, fuzzy, happy year for the entire project. And I would like to see that 2022 becomes a really good year for user testing, feedback, and collaboration, that kind of thing. I mean, if you take Anne, for instance, me and Anne talk from time to time on messages and write big messages to each other and stuff. And Anne is like my corridor into the project as such. And I've found Anne to be, like, out of everybody that I've met, to just be the kind of open door to the project as such. And but as we can see into this evening, I don't know what time it is for everyone there, but for me it's the evening. Anne is collaborating on this talk and also completely active in the chat at the same time as well. And it feels to me that, like, from a UX point of view, like, we can't just totally rely on Anne and a few other people, because she's clearly good at, like, multitasking, because she's doing it tonight. And I don't know how you're doing that, because I can only focus on the one thing at a time.
Us too, which is also really funny.
Well, exactly. So it feels that, like, one of the things that you said, Anne, was that, you learn a lot when you come on panels like this, and people say stuff like Peter in the comments, or even me or Ronald or Cami, for instance, that you don't tend to hear via your normal channels. And I wonder if, like, the project could look at kind of a possibility of, like, outsourcing some user feedback aspects to different people in the community who are completely never going to go into the Slack WordPress thing. They're never going to go on GitHub, and the different places where the traditional feedback is done. And because I can see that, there's money being put into the team that you're in, and the 4 people that you're in, is an opportunity to widen that feedback loop and widen the different perspectives that come back in. So I think that Beans's 5.9 comes out, and it is a legit finished, or pretty finished product. I think it would be the best opportunity to try and get as much feedback as possible from all sorts of different people, so that you don't need to rely on you turning up on things like this all the time, to multitask and then get these perspectives and report back. It can be done for you, and you can have a break sometimes. I'm sure you deserve it.
That's very, very. I have some good news with this. Is the team I'm on at Automatic is the developer relations team, and we have grown quite large. I was the first one, and now I think we're at like 5 or 6 people, maybe more, with some front-end folks. But yeah, this is what you're describing is exactly something that's like very much on the of those of us on the team, and I know a lot of people in the community, because people don't join Slack. Like, we have 460 people in the outreach program channel, but like, how many are actually engaging on a day-to-day basis? Who's showing up to the Hallway Hangouts? And that's just in the channels there. But then how do you branch out beyond that? And it is really unsustainable. Like, I have, I think, 12 different WordPress Slack communities and like alert words set up for everything, but you can't keep on top of it. So I love that idea of having ambassadors in different spaces. And I've been really encouraged by Courtney, who was on earlier, has done that. So she's done stuff both when she was running boot camps and but very recently, like I think 2 weeks ago, ran something with GoDaddy with end user testing. And it's like, how do we tap on creatively and empower folks to go out and create spaces where they're getting feedback and then bringing it back in? And maybe that's through other, we throw bodies at it. I don't know what it would look like, but I love that idea, and it's something I want to kind of mull on, because I do think the outreach program model as itself is not necessarily something that we could replicate and have 5 different outreach programs. Like, I think that would be quickly unsustainable, and we'd be tapping people rather than bringing in new folks. So I agree, we need to widen that feedback loop. And right now it's like, part of it's like dragging people in and going to stuff, but I think eventually, once I can figure out what the commonalities across the different spaces, and that's part of why I say to ping me directly, is because it helps me see the patterns. Then we can kind of create some solutions that can cut through those patterns. But yeah, it's tricky right now. Do you feel a little bit like
I'm advocating for you to get a promotion and a pay rise so that you can become the manager of the feedback people and get paid some more money, maybe. So
I appreciate it, Paul. I'll pass it on. I did want to add briefly, pass it on. I did want to add briefly like some high level thoughts for 2022. I'll keep it short, but to me, the block themes and everything that encompasses that. So everything from having like integrated package block patterns to the block pattern directory, to there's explorations right now around having different theme JSON files, which would mean that you could have, with a theme, you activate a block theme, and then you could have like 4 or 5 different styling preset options that the theme developer could create for you. There also could be an opportunity for things like being able to import styles from someone else that they provide. And then from there, I think building on the foundation that Patterns is creating, having full page block templates or starter to page templates, I think would be really, really cool. And then going even like a step further in 2022, I really want to see more work done around block theme switching and being able to mix stuff and really getting that to be in a refined state. And tied to this, just I think come to a head pretty soon with block themes, hybrid themes, universal themes, classic themes. Like, how do you discover those? How do you manage them? How do you understand them? How do we communicate them so that folks can make really good decisions, and that it's elegant to switch between them rather than it being cumbersome or confusing or causing a bunch of breakage. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that all of this, I think, leads to new ways people can contribute. So if you're a designer, you can contribute with patterns. If you're a theme developer, contributing with block themes. There's also going to be, I don't know if folks have heard about this yet, it's very like, I think it's coming with 5.9, the WordPress photo directory through the Openverse project. But that's another big thing. I'm a photographer, so I'm like, cannot wait. I'm not a full-time photographer, but I love taking photos, and I cannot wait to contribute photos there. So I think we're going to see both, like with return in-person events and just like more feedback in general. I think there's also going to be huge ways to contribute that are coming, that are going to be brand new, that hopefully can involve more folks and inspire folks who maybe have been in the project but it felt like a little bit stale. Or I've heard some folks where it's like, bring the fun back into WordPress, where you could like hack something together and ship it and help a bunch of people. And I think we're going to have more of those coming up.
I think that contributing is one of the main links that actually brought us together in the first place. And I really hope that this culture of contributing at the personal level, at the team level, corporate level, whichever, will only grow. Because what I've seen is that WordPress could have been much better place, perhaps if we spoke enough and we contributed more, and if we actually had a place where we can, do things together. Because what I remember from previous WordCamps is that people were really contributing, but nowadays it's kind of hard to find the contributors. So I really would applaud the people who already contribute, and all three of you lost Ronald. So we're slowly falling apart as a team. So before we all need to leave somewhere, I would really like to reiterate Anne's wish that people should contribute. And there are so many, if for people who don't know, or for people who used to do that and then forgot about it, just remember how many great friendships you created through contributing, and how many times you actually had an amazing time with some people that you didn't know. So I think, and I contribute personally to several teams, and I'm very happy to be there. And as Anne said, please make sure that if you have any ideas that you would like to share, please ping her, or on Slack, or on some other networks that you might actually find her, or at events as such. You could have used the opportunity even now to ask her different questions. Before we close, I would just like to, first of all, thank you for your patience, for coming here today, for giving your time, for contributing actually to community, because I feel that we are all here contributing at a larger scale now, helping people to understand what is going on. I would like to contribute to you as people, because you've proven to have very high ethical skills and standards, and that you are really there to help people. And that's really amazing. And then also to wish you all the best in 2022. And I hope actually, Anne, that we could repeat one of these meetups, but then next year that we have some like workshop, so people could join, and maybe we can even stream it, and then people could join with their ideas or proposals or suggestions, or perhaps something what they don't like, something that will actually take the development in the right direction, instead of us, going a little bit left and right before we understand in which direction we want to go. So is there anything else that you would like to say to our viewers of this show later after recording, and our current attendees at this event?
I think
Thank
I've
you.
said enough. Yeah, I've said enough for
Yeah.
2021 now, I think.
More words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say thank you, because I think there's a lot of things you can be spending your time on, and I take it really seriously when people spend time thinking about WordPress and how WordPress feels for people. So yeah, that would be my main. Stay well, take care of yourself.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone too. It's great.
Yes, don't forget to make wishes. And Marcus is saying here, can we get the same group back here in next December and see how all of this panned out? Yeah, there is a long-standing for next December, actually, to check where we are from this story. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. It was an utmost pleasure to host you and to actually speak to such amazing people, and people in the chat who are actually being, the chat is exploding. I think I'm going to read this a couple of times. This recording will be up tomorrow evening, plus all the links that we shared today and that our hosts have shared today will be there as well. So if you didn't catch any of the links, you'll get them there. This is our last meetup for this year. Thank you very much. All the best, and I see you in 2022. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.